There are a few more Vedic legends that indicate or suggest Arctic conditions of climate or of calendar, and we will briefly examine them in this video. One of these legends relates to Vishnu and his 3 long strides, which are distinctly mentioned in several places in Rigveda. Yeshka quotes the opinion of 2 older writers regarding the character of these 3 steps. One of these, that is, Shakapuni, holds that the 3 steps must be placed on the earth, in the atmosphere, and in the sky, while Anubhava thinks that the 3 steps must be located, one on the hill where the sun rises, another in the meridian sky, and third on the hill of setting. Professor Max Mueller thinks that this 3-fold stepping of Vishnu is emblematic of the rising, culminating, and setting of the sun. And Muir quotes a passage from the Ramayana, which mentions Udaya Pravada, or the mountains of sunrise, and on top of it is the peak, the place where Vishnu's first step was planted. We're then told that his second step was placed on the summit of Meru, and that when the sun had circled round Jambudvipa by the north, he is mostly visible on that lofty peak. It seems therefore that according to Ramayana, the first step of Vishnu was round Jambudvipa and was planted after sunset, whatever that may mean. In the Puranic literature, Vishnu's 3 steps appear as the 3 steps of Vamana, the 5th incarnation of Vishnu. Bali, powerful enemy of the gods, was celebrating a sacrifice when, assuming the form of a dwarf, Vishnu approached him and begged him for 3 paces of ground. No sooner was the request granted than Vishnu assumed miraculous form and occupied the whole earth by the first step, the atmosphere and everything above it by the second. Bali, who was lord of the universe before and was surprised at the metamorphosis of the dwarf, but had to make good on his own word by offering his head as the 3rd step for Vamana. The offer was accepted, and Bali was pressed down under the 3rd step into the netherworld, and the empire of the earth and heavens above was again restored to Indra, from whom it had been snatched away by Bali. Among these various interpretations, one thing stands out very clearly. Vishnu represents the sun in one form or another. But Vedic scholars are not agreed as to whether Vishnu's strides represent the daily or yearly course of the sun. So we must therefore carefully examine Vedic passages relating to Vishnu, see if any indication is found therein to decide which of these 2 views is more probable or correct. Now, Vishnu is described as setting in motion like a revolving wheel his 90 steeds with their 4 names, evidently referring to 360 days, divided into 4 groups, or seasons, of 90 days each. Thus is good evidence to hold that the yearly course of the sun must be taken as the basis of the exploits of Vishnu. Rigveda further tells us that Vishnu was the intimate friend of Indra, and that he assisted Indra in his fight with Vitra. Thus we're told that Indra, about to kill Vitra, said, "O friend Vishnu, stride vastly." And Vishnu is also said to have opened the cow's stable with the assistance of his friend, while both Indra and Vishnu are described as having together vanquished Shambhara, conquering the host of Varshans and producing the sun, dawn, and the fire. It's evident from these passages that Vishnu was the associate of Indra in his fight with Vitra, and if so, one of the 3 steps must be placed in regions where his fight was fought, that is, in the netherworld. So we can now understand why it is said that 2 of the 3 steps of Vishnu are visible to man, but the 3rd is beyond the reach of birds and mortals. When the 3rd step of Vishnu is located in the netherworld, it can well be said to be invisible, or beyond the reach of mortals, and we've seen that the abode of Vitra is said to be hidden and filled with darkness and waters. If Vishnu helped Indra in his fight with Vitra, his 3rd step must be taken to correspond with the home of Vitra. In other words, Vishnu's strides represent the annual course of the sun, divided into 3 parts. During 2 of these, the sun was above the horizon, and thence 2 of Vishnu's 3 strides are said to be visible. But when the 3rd or last part of the year the sun went below the horizon, producing continuous darkness, Vishnu's 3rd step was said to be invisible. It was then that he helped Indra demolish Vitra, bring back the dawn, the sun, and the sacrifice. It's been shown in the last videos that Indra's fight with Shambhara commenced on the 40th day of Sharad, or in the 8th month after beginning of the year of Vasanta. These 8 months of sunshine and 4 of darkness may very well be represented by 2 visible and 1 invisible step of Vishnu, and the Puranic story of Vishnu sleeping for 4 months in the year further supports this same view. It may also be noticed that Vishnu is said to sleep on his serpent bed in the midst of the ocean. And the ocean and the serpent here alerted to are evidently the waters, and Ahi or Vitra mentioned in the Vitra legend. It is said the sleep of Vishnu represents the rainy season of 4 months, but this is a later misinterpretation of the kind that we've noticed in our recent videos, and regards to the waters. When the exploits of Indra were transferred from the last season of the year, or the rainy season, the period during which Vishnu lay dormant, must have been naturally understood in the same way and identified with the rainy season. But originally Vishnu's sleep and his 3rd step must have been identical, and as the 3rd step is said to be invisible, we can't suppose that it was planted in the rainy season, which is visible enough. The long darkness of the winter night in the Arctic region can alone adequately represent the 3rd step of Vishnu, or the period of his sleep. And the legend about the Phrygian god who, according to Plutarch, was believed to sleep during the winter and resume his activity during summer, has been interpreted by Professor Rees in the same way. The Irish Kuvad of the Ultonian heroes also points out the same conclusion. But apart from the sleep of Vishnu, which is Puranic, we have a Vedic legend which has the same meaning. In Rig Veda, Vishnu is represented as having a bad name, Shipivishta. Thus the poet says, "O Vishnu, what was there to be blamed in thee when thou declarest, I am Shipivishta?" Yeshka records an old tradition that according to Apumanavava, Vishu has 2 names, Shipivishti and Vishnu, of which the former had a bad sense, and then quotes the aforesaid verse, which he explains in 2 ways. The first of these 2 interpretations accords with that of Apumanyava and Shipivishti, is there explained by Yeshka to mean enveloped like the private parts, or with rays obscured. Yeshka, however, suggests an alternative interpretation and observes that Shipivishva may be taken as a laudatory appellation, meaning one whose rays are displayed. It is inferred by some scholars from this passage that the meaning of the word had already become uncertain in the day of Yashka, but it's not probable, for even in later literature, it is an appellation meaning either one whose hair has fallen off or one who's inflicted with an incurable skin disease. The exact nature of the affliction may be uncertain, but there is no doubt that the name has a bad meaning, even in latter Sanskrit literature. But in days when the origin of this phrase, as applied to Vishnu, was forgotten, theologians and scholars naturally tried to divest the meaning from its opprobrious import by proposing alternate meanings. Yaska was probably the first Narutka to formulate a good meaning for the word by suggesting that Shipi may be taken to mean rays. That is why the passage from the Mahabharata, quoted by Muir, tells us that Yashka was the first to apply the epithet to Vishnu, and it is unreasonable to infer from it, as Muir has done, that the writer of the Mahabharata was not a particularly good Vedic scholar. In the Taittiriya Samhita, we're told that Vishnu was worshipped as Shipivishta, and that Shipi means cattle. Shipivishta is thus explained as a laudatory appellation by taking Shipi to equal cattle, sacrifice, or raise. These etymological devices have failed to invest the word with any good sense in Sanskrit literature. And this fact by itself is sufficient to show that the word Shipivishva originally was, and has always been, a term of reproach indicating some bodily affliction, though the nature of it is not exactly known. The theological scholars, it's true, have tried to explain the word in a different sense, but this is due to their unwillingness to give opprobrious names to their gods, rather than any uncertainty about the real meaning of the word. Thus it was that the word Shipivishta, which originally was a bad name according to Apamanyava, was converted into a mysterious name for the deity. This transition of meaning was confined only to theological literature and did not pass over into non-theological works. The obvious reason that in ordinary language the bad meaning of the word was sufficiently familiar to the people. It can therefore be little doubt that Shipavishta was used in a bad sense, as stated. These verses have been translated by Muir as follows: I, a devoted worshipper, who know the sacred rites, today celebrate this thy name, Shipavishva. I, who am weak, laud thee, who art strong, and dwellest beyond this lower world. What, Vishnu, hast thou to blame, that thou declarest, I am Shipavishva? Do not conceal from us this form, since thou didst assume another shape in the battle. The phrase, dwelling in a lower world, or beyond this world, furnishes us with a clue to the real meaning of the passage. It was in the netherworld that Vishnu bore this bad name. And what was this bad name, after all? Shipavishva, or enveloped like Shipa, meaning that his rays were obscured or that he was temporarily concealed in a dark cover. The poet, therefore, asks Vishnu not to be ashamed of the epithet because he says the form indicated by the bad name is only temporarily assumed as a dark armor for the purpose of fighting with the Asuras, and it was no longer needed. Vishnu was invoked to reveal his true form to the worshipper. That is the real meaning of the verses quoted above, and in spite of the attempt of Yashka and other scholars to convert the bad name of Vishnu into a good one with help of etymological speculations, it's plain that Shipavishta is a bad name, and that it signified the dark outer appearance of Vishnu in his fight with the demons of the netherworld. If the sun was called Brihashipas when moving in regions above the horizon, it could be very well described as Shipavishtas, or enveloped like Shepa when moving in the netherworld. And there's hardly anything therein of which the deity or of his worshippers should be ashamed. Later Puranic editions represents Vishnu as sleeping during this period, but whether we take it as sleep or disease, it means one and the same thing. It is the story of Vishnu going down into the netherworld, dark or diseased, to plant his third step on the head of the Asuras, or in the dark armor, to help Indra in his struggle for water and light, a struggle which we've seen lasted for a long time and resulted in the flowing of waters, the recovery of the dawn, and the coming out of the sun in a bright armor after a long and continuous darkness. A comparison with the abodes of the other Vedic deities, who are said to traverse the whole universe like Vishnu, confirms the same view. One of these deities is Savitri, who is described as measuring the world, and we are told there are 3 heavens of Savitri, 2 of them are near, and the third, bearing the brave, is in the world of Yama. This means that 2 of Savitri's 3 abodes are in the upper heaven, and 1 in the netherworld or the kingdom of Yama. The second deity that traverses or measures the universe is Agni. He has 3 stations, 1 in the ocean, 1 in heaven, and 1 in the waters. His light is spoken of as threefold, and he has 3 heads and 3 seats, powers or tongues. Now, although these 3 stations don't seem to always be conceived alike, yet one of them at any rate can be clearly identified as the third step of Vishnu. For we are told that the third station of Agni is known only to Vishnu, while Agni with Upama, the last step of Vishnu, is said to guard the sacred cows. This description agrees well with other verses where swift-moving cows and a spring of honey are said to exist in the place where the highest step of Vishnu is planted. It's been shown previously that Agni sometimes represents the sun in Rig Veda, and that his hiding the waters and coming out of them as the child of waters was only a different version of the sun, sinking below the horizon for a long time and then emerging out of the nether ocean at the end of the long Arctic night. Vishnu is also the same sun under a different name, and the third step of Vishnu and the third or hidden abode of Agni can, therefore, be easily recognized as identical in character. The third deity that traverses the universe is the Ashvins, to whom the epithet going round is applied several times in Rig Veda. The Ashvins are said to have 3 stations, and their chariot, which is said to go over both the worlds alike, has 3 wheels, one of which represented as deposited in a cave or a secret place, like the 3rd step of Vishnu, which is beyond the ken of mortals. This coincidence between the 3rd station of the 3 different world-traversing gods cannot be treated as accidental, and if so, the combined effect of all the passages stated above will be clearly seen to point out to the conclusion that the 3rd, or hidden place, dwelling, or abode in each case, must be sought for in the netherworld, the world of the Pitris, of Yama, of water, and of darkness.